Training classes to become creative. Creativity is all about asking questions. And we have killed creativity in our schools. With the small children, they go to the schools, we teach them how not to ask questions. We give them the syllabus, we give them the course material, we tell them that by heart this, memorize this, come back to the examination, and we will give you questions from the portion that we have given you from the syllabus, and you just by heart everything come and kind of reproduce in the examination. So we have stopped our children from asking questions. If the inquisitive little child asks questions, the parents stop the child. Why are you asking silly questions? And parents have no time to answer the questions from the child. So we have actually stalled the process of creativity, the art of creativity in our children. And when the same children grow up, when they go to higher schools and colleges and universities like this, the creativity has already been killed. We can rejuvenate that, we can rekindle that creativity by helping our people in universities, colleges, and organizations to ask questions. Just ask questions. What problem that we're grappling with? What challenges that we're facing? What issue that we are trying to solve? What new solution that we're trying to develop? Why do we have this problem? What could be the root causes? How can we address? What are the possible solutions? My dear friends, ask questions to yourself, to your colleagues, to your friends. From the process of questioning, creativity will come. The other tool to improve creativity is challenge the status quo. Challenge what's going on, what's in practice. Question it, challenge it. Ask yourself, can this be done differently? When there was a doctor in Minneapolis who had a clinic in that mall, in a supermarket or in a huge mall in Minneapolis in the United States. And the doctor supposedly should have a place where he is going to consult the patients, and then he needs to have a patient's waiting area where patients can come and wait for the doctor, wait for their turn. This doctor challenged the status quo because the space was very, very costly. The price was exorbitant. He said, I would have my clinic in that mall, but I will not have a patient's waiting area. So everybody asked him, how is that possible? What would the patients do? They need to, otherwise there'll be a huge crowd right in front of a clinic. You will not be able to manage that. The doctor said, no, I'm going to challenge the status quo. I'm going to have my clinic, but there'll be no waiting area. So he procured a few pagers, paging instrument. And a patient would walk in, he or she would be handed over a pager with an instruction that when your turn comes, you would get a message on your pager. You collect this instrument and then go to the mall. It's a huge mall, go and do shopping. Whenever your turn comes, we'll send you a message on the paging instrument. And that's what he exactly did. So he did not have any patient's waiting area, and all that he did is procured a few paging instrument and then just gave away. Every time a patient walked in, a pager was handed over, and when the patient's turn comes, the assistant would page the patient, send a message on the instrument, and the patient would arrive there. So that was his way of challenging the status quo. I told my colleagues, where I'm leading talent transformation in my organization, I told my colleagues that we'll run a training organization where there'll be no trainers. Trainers will stop training. Well, everybody said, how is that possible? How can you have a training center set up and where you have no trainers? I said, let's challenge the status quo. So trainers will stop training, trainers will be facilitating learning, but we will use other means to train people. So we developed our suite of e-learning products, interactive learning solutions, simulation learning environment, and so on, where the trainer's role shifted from first delivering training in the classroom to creating content which was suitable for an online virtual environment, for being the facilitator of that ecosystem, for being a mentor rather than a teacher or a trainer in the classroom, for providing support, coaching, etc. outside the classroom environment. And the new setup is something that we're experimenting, is working well. Now the trainers are enjoying the new work which they're doing, which is creating content which is interactive, which is interesting, which gets the attention of the audience, a millennial audience, and so on. So this is really forcing them to think differently. So in my opinion, creativity is all about asking questions, is about challenging the status quo. It's also about trying to see beyond the obvious. It's about developing the ability to see what is beyond that wall, because we can't see anything beyond that wall. But we need to develop the ability to see beyond the obvious, because we don't see anything beyond that. But how can we really start seeing what is beyond that? So that's possible. Steve Jobs did that very well. So when the whole world was using mainframe computers, which were as big as a probably two-storied building, he could imagine that this computing device can be on a desktop. That's what he started producing his Apple Mac, the Macintosh computer, where he brought in a desktop, brought this computing device and capability on a desk. And then all the best manufacturers, the best computer manufacturing companies were producing laptops. They were trying to produce the best laptops. He could already imagine that the computing powers can be on the palms of people. It can be on your hand, and then that's why he was already thinking about making the iPhone. And that's how he imagined the future of computing is going to be the smartphones, the touch screens, and the smart phones which can really perform the role of a computer more efficiently and more effectively, faster and better. So he had the ability to connect the dots, to see the future, see beyond the obvious. So that's something that all of us should try and develop. You might say Steve Jobs was a genius, he was an exception, he was a born creative person. We are not like that. We probably cannot be. But my dear friends, if you just start asking questions, what next? What more? How can we do this better? How can we do this differently? You will be definitely moving towards it. Because when Henry Ford was asked, he said, if I went and asked my customers, what do you need? They would have said, we need faster horses. They probably did not know that, this automobile industry can bring about the automobile engine and the car, which can really run much, much, much faster than horses that people can imagine. But if you ask customers, they would only say, we need faster horses. Steve Jobs said, if I asked my computer, they would have said, we need better laptops. They would have never imagined a smartphone. So if you today ask an individual, a person, what do you need in a car? What more do you need in a car? They will say probably a more luxurious car, better, more features in a car, and so on. But if the innovators were stuck there, they wouldn't have thought about the driverless car. So always think beyond. A good hockey player plays with the ball, but he positions himself where the ball is going to be. So that's the ability to see the future. And ladies and gentlemen, my dear young men and women, we need to start looking at the future, where the ball is going to be, where we need to position ourselves. So start questioning ourselves asking yourself, and that's really going to be the key differentiator. So from innovation, let's move to technology. Technology is the disruptor today. It's the enabler. It's the driver. It also causes a lot of heartburns because of technology, automation, robotics, etc., RPA, and so on. Many people are jobless today. People are losing their jobs. People are, the breadwinners in families are losing their jobs. This is creating a lot of social unrest, creating a lot of disharmony, imbalance in terms of income, etc. So technology is also causing a lot of harm. But now the question is, we cannot live without technology. While technology might be taking away jobs, it's also creating new job opportunities. So while I give this example many a times, how many of you can really drive a four-wheeler? Right, a few hands go up. So 10 years ago, when all of us used to drive a car, and if the husband is driving the car and if the wife is sitting next, typically what happens when you reach the destination, the wife would get down and then help the husband park the car. She will say, now turn left, turn right, hey, be careful, you might hit the pillar, hey, go back and start all over again. So that was the role of a wife as a subject matter expert, giving tips to the husband as to how to park the car. What happens today?
Cameras.
You don't need the wife anymore.
Only for parking.
That's well, the bad news is the wife's role as a subject matter expert goes away. Well, that can happen. I could be considered as biased if I say wife's role as a subject matter expert goes away. That can happen to the husband as well. If the wife is driving, the husband is helping the wife park, the husband's role as a subject matter expert goes away. So, my dear friends, that's the bad news. What's the good news? Wife is no longer the SME. What's the good news? The good news is wife doesn't go away. She still is there. The spouse is still there. And she can do something else during that time. She can choose to do something else. She can probably use a smartphone and then send a few messages on WhatsApp. Or she can do something else. So that was on a lighter side. But the point that I'm trying to drive home is, while our roles are becoming extinct, while our roles are disappearing, we are still existing, we are still very much alive and kicking. We need to start playing different roles. We need to prepare ourselves for different roles. We need to start playing, we need to upskill, upgrade, reskill ourselves to prepare ourselves for new roles. And if you believe that with your MBA degree, you have arrived in life, you're mistaken, because you have to keep learning all the time, unlearning, relearning, upskilling, reskilling yourself all your life. Because technology is going to do that disruption in your life, and if you really want to deal with that, then you really have to keep upskilling and reskilling yourself all the time. But remember, my dear friends, technology is not the creator of momentum. It is only the accelerator of momentum. It accelerates momentum. But the creation is by all of you, by human beings like you. We create the momentum. Technology can accelerate that. So technology is a tool. Technology is not the purpose. Technology is not the objective. It's not the destination. It's a tool to achieve our purpose. It's a tool to accelerate momentum. It's a tool to reach our destination. That's important. So our purpose has to be very clear. Our objective has to be very clear. What problem I'm going to solve? Dr. Bharadwaj was talking about it. How can I reach the last mile in our country? How can I reach the nooks and corners of this country? How can I solve real problems in our villages, in our society, in our towns, in our cities, in our country? How can I solve problems? How can I create new possibilities? How can I create new opportunities? That's the purpose. Then we can always think, how can we use technology to accomplish our objective or our purpose. So, interestingly, when we talk a lot about data analytics and all of that, I know there is a panel discussion around that in some time. Who is which team won the World Cup football this time? France. And there were many companies used analytics to predict who the winner can be. And I'm going to tell you that all those predictions were wrong. Including Google Analytics and everybody, or the best of companies who are actually taking pride in analytics, predicted Brazil, Germany, Italy, and so on. None of them actually came out the winner. The winner was France. So when we use analytics, when we use technology to predict human performance, sometimes we can be mistaken. Because human beings are a bundle of aspiration, emotion, pride. They have a sense of achievement. So it's sometimes difficult, or maybe you can be grossly mistaken if you attempt that. I was in a conference in Symbiosis Institute of Management Studies yesterday, and they were talking about analytics, and I told them one thing, that if you're going to use analytics to make decisions about people, then be careful, because the man or the woman you met yesterday is 24 hours richer in knowledge and experience today. So if you look at your past experience with that person and try to make judgments about that person today using whatever tools, you can be mistaken, because that person may not be the same today. So when we're talking about HR analytics or analytics on human beings, we need to be very, very careful, because human beings are not they're not really machines. They're not robots. They're actually beings with their own emotions, with their own aspirations, with their own aspiration in life. So we'll really have to deal them differently. So that's where the human aspect of technology comes into play. So unfortunately, we're living in a world where technology, instead of bringing people together, is creating barriers among people. And the best example, as we go back home, and as you walk into any home today, in the evening, you would find the father and the mother and the son and the daughter all sitting together in the same room. And everybody, each one of them is on their smartphone and on their WhatsApp. So what's the value of this technology, which is creating barriers between people? That technology is bad, which creates barriers among people. The technology which brings people together is good technology. That's how I view technology. But again, it's the way we look at technology, whether we are slaves to technology, or we are the master to technology. That's a choice that we'll have to make as we move forward. So, Honorable Principal was talking about, he was giving an example about manufacturing, and where he talked about how the productivity increased from 50 units of a product to 70 units only when an incentive was provided. So that really makes me feel a little awkward and then sad. That really questions about our Indians, what really motivates us to bring out the best in us. All of us probably know this story where this Indian man who was actually a sculptor, who was making a statue in one of the temples. And there's a couple of German tourists were visiting that place, and then saw this man very meticulously making the statue. And they stopped by, and they realized there is exactly a similar statue, or almost the same statue, in the look and feel, lying next to that person, to the sculptor who was actually making the statue. So they said, what are you doing? He said, I'm making a statue which will be kind of placed in this temple. He said, but you already have made one. Do you need two statues? The man said, no, I need one. He said, you have already made one. He said, no, that statue has a scar on his nose. The German tourist said, okay, a scar on the nose. Where are you going to place this statue? He said, on that pillar, 30 feet high. The Germans were really surprised. You're going to put that statue on that pillar, 30 feet high. It has a scar on its nose. Who will notice it? We even can't notice it now. Who is going to notice this? Who will know this? The man said, I will know this. I would know that this statue is defective. That's the value system. That's the sense. That's the value for excellence. Superior excellence is something that we Indians used to have in the past. And the value for excellence was moved by internal motives. There's no exterior motive. Nobody is going to reward me for making a statue and putting it there. Nobody would even know that there is a scar on the nose of that statue. I would know it. I would know it. So my value for excellence is driven by my own sets of value for excellence. It's not by any external motive. There's a session on quality in the second half, and there's a difference between quality and excellence. Quality in organization is driven by rewards, incentives. It's driven by your dashboards, driven by the business directives and commands from the senior leadership that we have to drive quality in the organization. It's an external motive. Excellence is an internal motive. We need to excel. That's my own desire. That's my own passion. That's my own motivation. I don't care whether somebody else is going to see that or not, is going to reward that or not. That's what the famous ghazal singer Jagjit Singh used to say, that if I don't do riyaz for 1 month, my audience would know. My audience would know it very well. And if I don't do riyaz for 1 week, my musicians who play instruments while I sing, they would know that Ustad hasn't done riyaz for 1 week. If I don't do riyaz for 1 day, nobody will know. But I will know. I would know that there's something wrong. I'm missing something. Nobody else, not even my musicians, not even the audience, nobody will know that I haven't done riyaz for a day.